Ồ, mưa rơi mà nhẹ nhẹ bên trời.
Sounds True presents Peacemaking, Session 1 with Thich Nhat Hanh. Perhaps no one knows more about waging peace than the Vietnamese Buddhist monk, poet, and peace activist Thich Nhat Hanh. Thich Nhat Hanh began his public peacemaking efforts in the 1960s when he left the monastery with his fellow monks in order to rebuild villages destroyed by the war. In 1966, he arrived in the United States to speak out against the war and met Martin Luther King Jr., who would nominate him for the Nobel Peace Prize. In the last days of the war, Thich Nhat Hanh was elected as chairman of the Vietnamese Buddhist Peace Delegation in Paris. Today, he leads a community of Buddhist activists in southern France at Plum Village. In this public lecture on peacemaking, he begins by helping us to understand our personal responsibilities for waging peace. Here's Thich Nhat Hanh.
Để cho hơi thở.
Last time when I visited America, a friend of mine, she's a Buddhist, she told me that I should not grow lettuce. I should use my time to write more poems because she liked my poems. And she said, not many people can write poems like you do, but everyone can grow lettuce. Why do you waste your time growing lettuce? I said that, well, if I do not grow lettuce like this, I cannot write poems like this. Because we can distinguish between the time the artist does not create and the time when she or he creates. In fact, we are creating all the time, because the period of time when we do not create, that period of time determines the value of the art created by the artist. It's like when you go to buy a necktie, you may have the impression that you are making a choice, standing in front of a row of neckties. But in fact, it is the necktie that makes the choice. The choice, you have been conditioned by many things. And now you present yourself before the necktie, and the necktie catch you. So creating is like that too, because it depends our way of life, our way of seeing things, our way of working, of resting, of being. Then when the moment comes, the work of art comes. And it does not come out of that moment only, it comes out from your way of life. It's like arranging flowers. You do not arrange flowers only when you arrange flowers. Because arranging flowers, you only need a few minutes or maybe half an hour. But during the day, the way you look at things, the way you look at the trees, the flowers, the rocks, you treat people, you breathe, you smile, it has a very important effect on the way you arrange flowers. Therefore, you are arranging flowers all the day, and not just during the few minutes you are arranging the flowers. That is what I would call the non-dualistic way of arranging flowers. When you look at a rose, you might think of the rose as something very immaculate, very fresh, as something completely different from the garbage can. But if you look more carefully, you see that without the garbage can, there cannot be a rose. Without a rose, there cannot be a garbage can. In a few days, a rose can become part of a garbage can. And if you are a good organic gardener, in a few months, you have chrysanthemums and roses out of the garbage can. So If you are skillful in arranging garbage, and then you are a very good arranger of flowers. And vice versa. Arranging flowers, it has to do with many things like how to breathe, how to control your anger, how to treat a friend, and so on. And treating a flower, you treat like you treat a Buddha. And when you come to the garbage, you have to treat the garbage like you treat a Buddha. And therefore, no discrimination against the garbage in favor of the rose. That is the non-dualistic way of arranging flowers. I said that because of the way we deal with our own anger. Sometimes we think our anger is our enemy. That is something that comes from the outside. And we should fight it, we should suppress it, we should throw it out. Our anger is like our bombs. It is us. Our anger has the roots in us, as well as our bombs. Our bombs have a root in us. The Buddhist teaching is that this is because that is. This is not because that is not. This is like this because that is like that. So if there is anger, it means something else is also as the origin of the anger. If the bombs are there, well, something is there also. That's our way of life, which has brought about the presence of the bombs. So if we want to deal only with the bombs, we want to throw the bomb away and keep the cause of the bomb, that is not possible, because that cause of the bomb is going to produce more bombs. Our anger is like that also. If we want to expel your anger, but the cause of our anger is still there, so it is going to produce more anger. I would like to share with you the way we deal with anger as a Buddhist. When we notice that there is anger in us, we refrain from saying things and doing things. Because saying things or doing things in that state of being is dangerous. It may cause damage that you will regret later. What you have to do by that time is just to breathe. Breathing in, I know that I'm angry. Breathing out, I know that I'm angry. Breathing in, I know that anger is still in me. Breathing out, I know that anger is still in me. Breathing in, I know that I am anger at this moment. Breathing out, I know that anger is me at this moment. You may ask why, what is the use of doing so, breathing on your anger? There is a difference already between the two states of being. If you are angry and you do not know that you are angry, anger can be destructive. But once you are aware of your anger, once you have produced the awareness of your anger by breathing, then your anger is now sponsored by your awareness. You know, anger is like a flower. It is a zone of energy. It is there. And it has deep roots within yourself and within society. And when it makes itself apparent, the first thing you have to do is to recognize it as it is. We should not try to suppress it. We should not try to evince it. We should only create our awareness to shine on it, to take care of it, the way you take care of your baby or your baby sister, your baby brother. Because of the awareness, that anger is yourself. That very anger is yourself. Again, non-duality. You and your anger are one. Of course, you want to identify yourself with something else like love, understanding, loving kindness. But anger is a part of ourselves. It's like the pen. You have this side and that side. or a stick, you have the right and the left. The right is there because the left is there. The left is there is because the right is there. Now, if you would like to eliminate the right, to conserve only the left, that is impossible to do. Because as soon as you cut this and you throw it away, this end become the right. And if you begin the operation, cut half, and then you still have the right. So it's not possible to identify ourselves with only one side. So you have to accept that loving kindness, when it is there, it is you. But anger, when it is there, it is also you. That acceptance is the beginning. So you know that you are anger, and you have to take good care of yourself, because anger is yourself. And you produce the awareness of breathing on your anger. Breathing in, I know that anger is there. Now, under the sponsorship of your awareness, of your breathing, a kind of transformation takes place immediately in the heart of the anger. You may not see it, but the very moment when you create awareness on your anger, there is a transformation taking place. It's like a flower, a tulip flower, a lotus flower. When the sun begins to rise, it's still in this position. But if the sun continues to shine on the flower and penetrate into the flowers, there's something going on in the flower. And a few hours after, the flower opens up itself to the sun. The sun sees everything in here. The sun is not only visiting the outside. The sun is penetrating inside. So your awareness on your anger is not just observing as a pure observer. It produces some change within your anger, because your anger and your awareness interact. And if you maintain the awareness on your anger for some time, your anger will have to open itself to you, like the flower to the sun. And when you begin to see the roots of your anger, the nature of your anger, you'll be liberated from it. And that is what we call the salvation by understanding, the liberation by understanding. And this is the work of meditation. But you get to practice it every day in order to do it more easily when the event happens. If you try to practice it for the first time, it may be a little bit difficult because you are not used to it. But every time you are irritated, every time you are angered, and if you practice like that, and then you can deal with your anger more easily. First, you realize that your anger is yourself, non-duality. And therefore, we do not do violence to our anger, trying to suppress it. We should never do like that. And therefore, the method is non-violence. You have to deal with your anger in the most non-violent way possible, because of the very fact that your anger is yourself. To meditate is not to transform yourself into a battlefield, the good side fighting the evil, because you know that evil and good belong to the same reality in yourself. Non-duality leads to non-violence, dealing with your body with non-violence, dealing with your feelings with non-violence. We should avoid doing violence to our body and avoid doing violence to our feelings. And anger is a feeling. Anger is a feeling. And anger is a zone of energy. You cannot reduce that energy to nothingness. You can only transform that energy into another kind of energy. And you can do it by practicing awareness and to look deeply into the nature of your feeling. Meditation has two aspects. The first aspect is to stop, and the second aspect is to look. If we do not stop, we cannot look. We have to stop in order to generate that kind of attention, that kind of concentration. And with that kind of attention and concentration, we can look deeply into the nature of things. In our case, the nature of a feeling. And if we keep looking deeply into that concentration, our anger will have to open itself for us to see. It cannot resist. It's like the flower vis-a-vis the sun. For instance, when you grow lettuce, and if the lettuce does not grow well, you don't blame the lettuce. You don't blame lettuce. You know that you have not taken good care of the lettuce. That is why they don't grow as you wish. But the people who live with you in the family, they are not very different from lettuces. If they lack care, loving kindness, they cannot grow well. We are wise enough not to blame the lettuce, but we have the tendency to blame people. And we know that people are not very different from the lettuce. We ourselves are lettuce plants. And if we are not taken good care of, we cannot grow well. Without love, without understanding, we cannot grow. Every one of us feel that. So if that person says something cruel or does something cruel, there must be a cause why he and she did so. So the first thing is not to get angry, but to breathe in and breathe out, and accepting the fact, and ask why it's like that, why he did like that, why he said things like that. And if you have the capacity of breathing, smiling, and looking at the person, trying to understand, that is a very big step we can make. There is a Chinese mother, the mother of Mencius. Her husband was already dead, so she practiced weaving in order to bring his child up, a little boy. One day, the little boy came home talking like a delinquent child. She was very sad because she had great hope about him. But she did not say anything. She just breathed and asked the question, why? She did not blame the boy. She did not punish him. She did not argue with him. She just breathed and asked herself, why? And then a few hours later, she found out that she has not chosen the right neighborhood to settle because there is no school in the neighborhood. The only delinquent children left like that. Her child has been exposed to that kind of behavior, talking. So she didn't do anything. She continued practicing weaving for 3 months to earn enough money in order to move to another neighborhood. And after that, her child became a different child. So she knows how to grow lettuce. She has one lettuce plant. And as she saw the state of her lettuce, she knows that she is not a very good lettuce grower. So she breathed and she found out. And that is what I call enlightenment. After a few hours of breathing and looking, she found the reason. And that is called enlightenment. And because of that understanding, she continued to love him and to have great hope in him. The same can be applied to the people who live with us. If a person said things like that and did things like that, there must be a reason. And therefore, meditation comes into the scene. And if we continue to practice like that, we'll be able to see very deeply. You have heard about the sea pirates in the Gulf of Siam. Because both people came to first countries of asylum, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Philippines. And on their way, they met with sea pirates that robbed them of everything, who killed them, who violated a woman and even very young children. And when you hear the reports about young girls of 12 or 13 years old raped by pirates, you get very angry at them. You might think that if you have a gun, you like to shoot these pirates in order to save the children. But if you look more deeply, you see that shooting the pirate would not help, because the pirate is an effect that has been brought about by many causes. One night I meditated on that and I saw myself as a pirate, non-duality. Suppose 30 years ago I was born in a fishing village near the coast of Thailand, and if I had a drunk father, a mother who knows nothing about raising children, I had no school, I only play with the delinquent children. And then when I grow up and become a ignorant fisherman, I will drawn into that business of being separate very easily. Life is very hard. And a friend come and tell me that, well, you only need to do once and get a little bit of gold or money, and then your life will be easier, because nobody has taught me to love, to understand. That is why I follow the advice. I became a separate. And if you shoot me, you cannot help me. Because last night or tonight, this very night, there are many hundreds of babies born along the coast of Thailand. And if we do not do anything for them, the economists, the politicians, the educators, and the other living beings, if we don't do anything for them, and then in 25 years, many of these babies born tonight will become separates. This is like that. That is why that is like that. So nobody can claim to be innocent. So a bodhisattva, an enlightened person, when he look at the separate, he can understand and he can love even the separates. I myself, if I was born there with the same conditions, I might have become a separate. So when you see like that, you stop blaming. And you know that the only way is to help. In that case, your anger vis-a-vis the separate will vanish. Concerning our governments, sometimes we get very angry because our governments do not have the kind of policy that we wish they would have in order to bring about reconciliation and peace. We have to practice the same kind of looking. Why they are like that? After government, they behave very much like each other. There are those who say that if I can be in the government, I will do differently. But I think that is not very likely to happen, because our society is built in such a way that any government could do more or less the same thing. And our degree of awakening, our way of life, is the root of everything. If we know that it is impossible to remove this without removing this, and then the hope to remove only the bombs is naive. To remove only the bombs and retain the rest, that is a very naive hope. Because the bombs are the fruit of the tree. And if we don't look at the tree and the roots, we are going to have more bombs. So anger vis-a-vis the government does not help. Anger does not help in any case. Violence always leads to more violence. I talked to you about non-dualistic way of seeing things. When the United States of America began to be involved in Vietnam, it should have seen that nature of non-duality of the world, that the well-being of this side depends on the well-being of the other side. It should have seen that North and South Vietnam belong to the same reality. It could have offered to help South Vietnam and North Vietnam at the same time. It could have done better by negotiating with the Soviet Union in order to collaborate in helping the North and the South. This is because that is. Of course, negotiating in order to help Vietnam in a peaceful way is a difficult thing, but it's not more difficult than fighting a war. I think if being a very powerful nation, America could have talked with the Soviet Union about helping Vietnam, both North and South. A kind of agreement to help Vietnam only with what the Vietnamese need, like more schools, more food, more rural development, to agree that no guns, no arms should be shipped either to the North and to the South. That would be a much wiser way of helping. But America was not thinking of helping Vietnam. America was only thinking of protecting herself. That is why that was not real helping. Helping in the deepest sense could only be envisaged in the non-dualistic way. If you say that North Vietnam take the side of the Soviet Union and South Vietnam take the side of America, and then both sides prepare for war, for self-defense, that is already the seeds of war. It has led to that kind of destruction of both the North and the South, and the sufferings continue. Do you know that the bombs still continue to explode, even if the war is ended? Violence always leads to more violence. When America started a war, it was not for Vietnam, it was for America. And when Americans stopped the war and withdraw from Vietnam, it was also for America and not for Vietnam. And you cannot say that you are helping Vietnam in that way. And many of us want to be helped in this way, but you could not understand. Because you are listening to the voice and the things that are suited to your ears. And that is why we were not being helped at all. And both the North and the South got destroyed. And America was so sure of herself, having that complex of being a big power, knowing everything, being able to win any kind of war. You know very well the war in Vietnam was a conflict, not exactly between the Vietnamese people, but between the world ideologies. And not the world ideologies having a war in our country, but all the weapons that we receive both in the North and the South come from the outside. That is the fruit of the way of seeing, the dualistic way of seeing things. And that is why In our meditation practice, we should be able to revise our way of seeing things. That's the basic. I talked to you about the rows, the garbage, the right and the left, the practice time or the non-practice time, all, everything is like that. And the principle of non-duality can be applied to everything. What can you say to a person that has suffered a great deal like that? In order to act, we need some kind of energy. And anger is not the kind of energy that we need in the peace movement. In the communist circle, people are talking of transforming our anger into energy, into force, revolution. But we all know that anger is not a very sane kind of energy. Because with anger, we cannot see clearly the reality. It's only care, loving kindness that can help us to see clearly. And anger is dangerous, especially in our present situation. We have to see that our government and ourselves belong to the same reality. Our government is at one end, and we belong to the other end. This is like this, that is why that is like that. Are we not worth our government? I think we deserve our government, and our government deserves us. Change in here, in order to have a change in here must take place, and vice versa. That is a non-dualistic way of seeing. Let's go back to the rows and the garbage. Well, the Soviet Union, Soviet citizens might think that they are a rose and American citizens are the garbage. The American citizens think of themselves as a rose and the Soviet citizens as the garbage. We want to blame the other side. But in the light of non-duality, interbeing means we cannot be by ourselves. We have to be with others. So I invented the word interbe. We can only interbe with others. We cannot be by our own self. So Russia and America, they both belong to the same reality. This is like this because that is like that. And therefore, the survival of this is conditioned for the survival of that. So only thinking of the survival of half is a naive way of thinking. In order for us to survive, we have to take care of the survival of the other part. It's very clear. When we got back to our fear and our hope, and look at them very carefully, we understand the fear and the hope of a Soviet citizen. It's like when we look into the garbage, we can see the rose, and when you look at the rose, we can see the garbage. Things inter-are. The same thing can be applied to the third world. The suffering, the poverty of the third world is linked with the wealth in the first world. If the rose is made of non-rose elements like garbage, and the garbage is made of non-garbage elements like rose, and then wealth is made of poverty, and poverty is made of wealth. And if we don't see that, very soon we have to suffer. If the third world cannot survive, and then the first world will not be able to survive. It's like the trees. You asked a question about nature and war. We all know that in our former lives we were trees. And we continue to be trees. Now, without trees, we cannot survive. But the trees are now begin to die. Millions of hectares of forest land have been destroyed by acid rain. We know that if trees cannot survive, humans are not going to survive very long. The best thing a tree can do is to be a real tree. You agree? The best thing a tree can do is to be a real tree. If a tree is less than a tree, and then we will get into trouble, all of us, all species. But the trees now have begun to be less than trees because humans, we are less than human beings. We are irresponsible. We are exploiting nature to the degree that nature cannot be nature because of our automobiles, of our factories, of our tendency to exploit as much as we can. Then the trees now have become less than a tree. It's very alarming. This is like this. That is why that is like that. We are like this. That is why the trees are like that. And if the trees are like that, we are going to be like that too. Everything is like that. We interact not only with other human beings, but we interact with the trees and with the rivers, with the air. I have a hermitage in France. It was south of Paris, about 2 hours drive. One day I left the hermitage and went to the wood nearby to spend my day. I opened all the windows and let the sun shine in. When I got back to the hermitage, it was very unpleasant. It was dark, cold, the wind was blowing, and all the sheets of paper I put on my desk were blown over, scattered all over. The first thing I did is to close the windows and the doors. The second thing I did is to strike a match and light a lamp. The third thing I did is to make a fire in the fireplace. And the last thing I did is to pick up the sheets of papers and make a pile on the desk. And I sat down near the fireplace. About half an hour after, the hermitage became pleasant again, cozy and bright and very pleasant. I sit in the hermitage and I listen to the wind and the trees outside. They were very real to me, both the hermitage and the wind and the wood. It was unhealed. During our daily life, sometimes we feel cold, empty, miserable, like my hermitage that evening. We are exposed to everything in society, and we are less than ourselves. And any attempt to make connection with nature, with humans, do not succeed. We cannot warm us up. So the best thing is to close the windows and to make a fire within yourself. And this can be done by practicing conscious breathing and smiling. That is what we learn in the Sutra on Breathing. The Sutra on Breathing is a very early text on Buddhist meditation that the monks and the nuns of the time of the Buddha learned by heart. The Buddha presented 16 ways of breathing. 4 ways dealing with your body, 4 ways dealing with your feelings, 4 ways dealing with your mind, and 4 ways dealing with the objects of your mind. That means the flower, the table, the mountain, because everything is the object of your consciousness. When you practice conscious breathing, you only pay attention to your breathing. You cut off all thinking. You also cut off all longing, to the past and all worries concerning the future. You go back and you be one only with your breathing. Breathing in, I know that I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know that I am breathing out. Breathing in, I smile. Breathing out, I smile. Like that. It is a very simple exercise. If you want to try Buddhist meditation, you have to study that sutra, Anapanasati Sutta, available in English already. Together with another text on meditation, the Satipatthana Sutta, the Sutra on the Four Foundations of Mindfulness. These two texts are the earliest texts on Buddhist meditation that was used in the time of the Buddha. And if you study one text, you understand better the other text, and vice versa. I very strongly recommend these two texts to you. And the teaching is very simple, very easy to follow. The first function of conscious breathing is you get back to the present moment. Because in your daily life, your mind is always wandering either to the past or to the future. And we tend to sacrifice our present moment for the sake of the future. In reality, life can be only contained in the present moment. And if you lose the present moment, you lose life. Someone said that humans are capable of making preparations to live, but not to live. And we worry all our life about our future. And therefore, conscious breathing brings you back to the present moment in order to be alive in the present moment. To get in touch. If you want to really see a flower, you should be really in the present moment. Because only in the present moment that you can meet a flower. And if you breathe and look at the flower, breathing in, I see the flower, breathing out, you see the flower. And you maintain the awareness of seeing the flowers as long as you wish. If you don't maintain your conscious breathing, the flower can vanish. Because your mind will be with the past, with the future, and with something else, with a thought. That is why you washing your dishes. You should not think of the coffee you are going to have when you finish. Because washing dishes can be a very pleasant thing if you know how to do it. And with conscious breathing and smiling and washing dishes, the task becomes much more pleasant, much more pleasant. And you can enjoy it. Wash a bowl or a plate carefully, joyfully, as if you give the baby Buddha a bath. Why not? And you bring joy to your life, to every minute of your life. You see a tangerine. There are many ways of eating a tangerine. There was a young man to whom I offered 3 tangerines, and he ate them while talking about his projects. He peeled the tangerine and throw sections of tangerine in his mouth and eat unconsciously while thinking only of his exciting projects. I was there, present. I looked at him eating his tangerines. I thought that, well, I was wasting my tangerine. He has already eaten 2 tangerines. There is only 1 left. So I said, Jim, stop. Eat your tangerine. So he stopped. He's an intelligent person. He stopped talking. He breathed. He peeled off the tangerine. Smell nice. Slowly, slowly. All his attention, taking one section, look at it, put it in his mouth, feel the juice coming out on his tongue. Eat slowly. And then take another section, and he ate his tangerine in that way. The tangerine became real. And the person who ate the tangerine became real also. And after he ate that third one, probably I said, good, because I did not lose that tangerine. When you drink a cup of coffee, you breathe on the coffee, you smile, and you make the coffee become real. And it can be real only in the present moment, like the flower. So conscious breathing make everything real. When you hug someone, if you practice conscious breathing, that someone become very real and you'll be much happier. Hugging is a Western practice. We don't practice hugging very much in Asian countries because we are shy. But many of us have learned hugging. We would like to contribute the breathing into the hugging. And we have tried and we see that it's wonderful because you can multiply your happiness by 10 or 20 times by hugging and breathing. Breathing in, I'm really hugging him. He's real. Please try it. Maybe we can try it later tonight. So the tangerine is like that. Try to eat the tangerine like this. Have a tangerine on your palm. Breathe to make it real. See the tangerine as a flower with the sunshine and the rain on it, and the tiny fruit. And then the bigger fruit, the color. And you see how wonderful a tangerine is. You have to be in touch with the wonders of life. And the wonders of life are everywhere around yourself and within yourself. But because you are possessed by our worries, our anxieties, our thinking, we lose life. We lose the wonders of life. We not only lose the flower, we lose also the blue sky, the clouds, the clear river, the tangerines, the little child. We lose everything. And one of the ways to have them back again is to go back to the present moment with conscious breathing. It's wonderful, the Sutra of conscious breathing. The second function of conscious breathing is to stop the thinking. Because most of the time we think too much. And when we think, we are only the thinking. But the thinking may not be the best. Being with the flower, being with your breathing, being with your smiling, being with the child, being with the blue sky is much more than thinking. And sometimes we cannot stop our thinking. Like when we leave a TV set on for a long time, it gets very hot. So when we think a lot, well, our head becomes very hot. And we want to stop it, but there is no button. So we go to a doctor for drugs in order to stop our thinking or to sleep. But this is not very safe way because even when we sleep, we continue our thinking and having nightmare, and we get addicted to the drugs as we use them too much. But practice conscious breathing and smiling, you turn off your thinking easily. And if you practice like that for 10 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes, you already become different. Without thinking, being only with the breathing and the smiling, and in touch, getting in touch with the wonders of life, you get renewed very quickly. You know that a flower, when it cannot communicate with the water in the pot, it withers, becomes tired. So if you want to save the flower, you dip the stem of the flower into the water and you cut it again. And now the cells are fresh, the water entered, and then now communication is restored between the water and the flower. You put it again in the pot, and a few hours later, the flower blooms again. Each of us is a flower of humanity. A human is a flower. And if you are not smiling, then something is wrong. You have to save yourself. You have to be in touch with the water of life in order to be refreshed and smiling like a flower. If there are people in your family that are not flowering, and then help them. Because something is preventing them from being in touch with real life. It's like the dry cell of the flower prevent the flower to be in touch with the water. So practice conscious breathing. You have a chance to be in touch with the wonders of life again, because they are all in the present moment. They can only be found in the present moment. And then stopping the thinking is also an opportunity for you to be in touch, because with the thinking is something that blocks the way of communication. When you look at the moon, you can either see it or not see it. If you don't see it because there is an obstacle, that obstacle might be your thinking, your worries, your anxieties, and your being not in the present moment. So you remove that, and you are in touch with the moon, which is wonderful. Are you in touch with your eyes? It's funny to question. But sometimes we are not in touch with our body. Sometimes we hate our body, and we have to make friends to reestablish a good relationship with our body again. You know that a person who has become blind suffers very much. She thinks that she is in hell now, as she is not capable of seeing things. If we ask whether she had or he had the opportunity to look really at anything deeply, he would say, no, I did not have really a chance to look at anything really carefully. Did you look at the blue sky carefully? No. Did you look at the moon carefully? No. Did you look at your baby carefully? No. Now it's too late. And she thinks that she could be the happiest person on earth if she recovered her sight. She is honest. If someone can help her restore her sight, she'll be very happy. She spent days and hours looking at everything. But maybe a few months later, she falls again into forgetfulness and do not realize that having good eyes is a wonderful thing. All of us have good eyes, capable of seeing all forms, all colors, and we always complain that we are not happy. The only fact that we have good eyes is already a very deep source of happiness. And we not only have eyes, but we have other things. We have our body, our hand. You know that putting your hand on the hand of a child in mindfulness, really get a feel of it. It's a wonderful thing. Even if you put your hand on your face, in mindfulness, realizing the contact is a wonderful. Because this hand is not only your hand. It has been handed down by several generations. Yeah. It is also your mother's hand. If you want your mother to put her hand on yourself, you just put on her. Try it. And you can feel her love. So just being aware of how wonderful things are. And then you'll be nourished by that wonderful feeling of being alive. And this is a very wonderful way of renewing yourself and counterbalancing the sufferings that you have to endure. You have your anxiety, your fear, your anger. And these are burning flames, burning you, make you suffer. And then you don't have contact with the real wonders of life. That is why in the river of feelings, we only have unpleasant feelings. Life is both dreadful and wonderful. And if we are only in touch with the dreadful side of life, we suffer. Suffering is not enough. We have to nourish ourselves with these wonderful feelings that are born out of our real contact with the wonders of life. Like breathing. Breathing is a wonderful thing. And if you practice, you enjoy your breathing. You don't need to go to Los Angeles and go back here in order to realize that breathing here is a better, the air here is better than the air in Los Angeles. We should be aware of the fact that happiness is available. Only our capacity of being happy is in question. When we are able to renew ourselves, everything will become new again. There is a Zen master in Vietnam who lived in the 13th century. One day he used a phrase that had been used by another master to answer a question. And the student told him, "Why do you use that old device?" He smiled and he said, "Every time I pick it up, it becomes new again." And that is true. And how do we renew ourselves? By going back to myself. With conscious breathing and smiling, I make a fuel of myself. The Buddha taught a sutra called the Sutra of Ideal Solitude. He said that ideal solitude is to go back to the present moment. Do not be attached to the past. Do not worry about the future. The past is no longer there. The future is not yet there. The intelligent person dwells peacefully and with stability in the present moment. That is the conclusion of that sutra. So first we think that we cut ourselves off from the world. But it is not true. That is the only way in order to be in real touch with the world. If you are less than yourself, and then no meaningful relationship can be obtained between you and another person or a tree. Well, if you are not quite yourself, and if you look at the flower, you cannot see the flower clearly, the flower will not reveal herself to you completely. The moon also. If you are really yourself, and then the moon will smile at you and reveal herself to you completely. That is applied to everything. If you have a friend, and if you are not quite yourself, your friend cannot be seen completely by you. So going back to you means to have the basic condition to have meaningful relationship with the world. And therefore, have an appointment with yourself. This afternoon, if you are not really yourself, and if you have someone who asks to see you, an appointment, you say, well, no, I cannot see you because I have an appointment. And if that is an appointment with yourself, that is the correct thing to do, because this is the kind of best appointment you may have. You have that appointment with yourself in order to be really yourself, and then any kind of appointment will be meaningful after that. And by being yourself, by being in touch with the wonders of life, you become more peaceful. You know how to deal with your anger, your frustration, your worries. And only by establishing peace in yourself that you can be helpful in contributing to peace. As I said before, the best thing a tree can do is to be a real tree. The best thing a human being can do is to be a real human being. And that is the basic condition for peace. If a tree is less than a tree, I said, then all of us could be in trouble. If a human being is less than a human being, and then every species will be in trouble. So that is why to be oneself, to be happy, to be smiling, to be kind with other people is the strongest base for peace. Otherwise, being less than oneself, everything one does for peace will only create more trouble. That is why being peace is the base for doing peace, making peace. That is why I consider to grow lettuce in peace, to eat a tangerine in peace, to breathe in peace, to smile is the basic action for peace. And that you can do at any time in your daily life. I believe strongly that a person that is not happy cannot work for peace. And happiness does not need a lot of conditions. Happiness is there, only our capacity of enjoying it is in question. Last month I led a retreat in San Francisco. The retreat lasted 5 or 6 days. And at the end of the retreat, everyone submitted a poem telling his or her insight or feeling. I remember that there is a poem beginning with 2 lines like this. I have lost my smile, but the dandelion still has it. I thought that these 2 lines are interesting enough, so I did not listen to the rest. I thought that if a person has lost his smile but is still capable of seeing that the dandelion still has it, his situation is not too bad. Because he still has the capacity of being in touch with the dandelion. And in fact, everyone is keeping our smile for us. The trees, the moon, the cloud, the river, the flowers, all are there supporting us, keeping our smile there for us. And if you lose your smile, be sure to remember to breathe, to go back to your present moment in order to be in touch with the flower, with the moon, with the river, with the cloud, in order to get your smile back. It can be done very quickly.
Cửa tung đôi cánh khép, một mũi tên sáng loáng lìa dây cung.
This concludes session 1 of Peacemaking with Thich Nhat Hanh. Our program continues with session 2.
Lao vút tới mặt trời nổ tung, đầy sân hoa cam rụng, phảng phất bóng vô cùng. Mưa rơi mà nhẹ nhẹ bên trời.
Sounds True presents Peacemaking, Session 2 with Thich Nhat Hanh.
Mưa rơi mà nhẹ nhẹ bên trời.
So suppose now you have learned something from this war. You have seen all the damages that it has inflicted on your heart, your mind, your people, and on the people of Iraq and other countries. And then you know that I should not wait until things happen in order to react like this time. I should prepare now for a war that can take place in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. Suppose you have 10 years in order to prevent a war. What would you do today and tomorrow and after tomorrow? If you find out the way of living, the way of being, the way of doing things in that direction, you find peace now. You will not be frustrated now.
Đầy vơi mà nỗi lòng.
My name is Tammy Simon, and in 1991, shortly after the outbreak of the Gulf War, I met with Thich Nhat Hanh and had the honor of conducting a rare interview with him in which I asked for his advice on how to respond effectively during a time of war. Here to introduce Thich Nhat Hanh is Vincent Harding, a professor of theology and author of Hope and History, someone who has been working for peace for over 4 decades, since his day as a friend and co-worker with Martin Luther King Jr.
Để cho hơi thở.
It may be that our country has gotten so accustomed to going to war over these years that we haven't taken the time to get some space to look at some of the strange things that wars do. For over the generations, it seems to me that human beings have always been surprised by the strange and magnificent and totally unexpected gifts that can come out of war. And I think about that when I think about that marvelous human being who is being interviewed here. Because Thich Nhat Hanh is surely one of the most unexpected and one of the grandest gifts that we received from the terror that was known as the war in Vietnam. He is, in a real sense, a gift to us, a poet, a mystic, a religious leader, a social worker in the best sense of that word, one who has profound concern for the weak, for the poor, for the broken, for the lost, for the refugee, for the exile. I first came in touch with Thich Nhat Hanh when he visited Atlanta, Georgia in the late 1960s. His coming there, as I recall, was part of his own deep sense of connection to Martin Luther King Jr. and the African American freedom movement of the time, the movement that has been unfortunately characterized as the civil rights movement. Thich Nhat Hanh understood that there was much more to that movement, much more moving at deeper levels than simply a quest for civil rights. He understood and was therefore deeply connected to the ways in which that movement was a movement for the development of humanity, the grander, greater, fuller opening of our human relationships to each other. And so he came to Atlanta, partly attracted by the power of that movement, and specifically attracted by his sense of connection to Martin Luther King Jr. He had written to Martin late in the 60s while the war in Vietnam was going on, asking King to speak out of King's own sense of humanity, to speak out on behalf of the broken people of Vietnam, the vulnerable victims, that mass of children and older people and others who are always the vulnerable victims of war, no matter how just the war may seem to someone. He was in Atlanta because King respected him as well, and eventually King would nominate him for the Nobel Peace Prize. When I heard him, he was speaking to a student audience there, and he reported on his time traveling through our country and meeting student groups all over the country. And he said that he was deeply moved and very appreciative of the way in which the students constantly spoke about how they wanted the United States out of Vietnam now. They wanted the war ended now. They wanted a ceasefire now. And Thich Nhat Hanh, in his quiet, wonderfully smiling way, said that he really appreciated that, and that he told students everywhere how much he appreciated their sense of urgency that justice should be done and that the war should be ended. But he said, this idea of wanting everything now, he said, I want you to know that I have a different experience. We have been struggling for freedom, for independence, for peace, for justice in our country against outside invaders for decades, for centuries, and we have tried to learn some things. And one of the things he said that we have been learning is that it is necessary to struggle with patience. Struggle with patience. Now, from Thich Nhat Hanh, this was no easy platitude coming from the outside someplace, coming from some disengaged relationship to the world. No, we knew by then that this marvelous Buddhist monk, this small, quiet, powerful man, was coming to us as a representative of what he called engaged Buddhism. As a matter of fact, often when I have seen him or heard him, it has occurred to me how much he reflects Gandhi's Satyagraha, Gandhi's attempt to bore into the depths of the Hindu teachings and to lift up this idea of Satyagraha and to translate it for us in the 20th century as holding on to truth, whatever the cost. That's what I think of when I think of Thich Nhat Hanh. Because for Thich Nhat Hanh, the basic truth to which he grasps and holds with all of his life is the truth of our oneness, what he likes to call our interbeing. And that point of view, that way of seeing and being and living and acting became eventually a position which helped to make him persona non grata in his own country. And so he is now an exile from that country because he dared to believe that North or South, they were all part of him. Communist or anti-communist, they were all part of him. And of course, in parenthesis, what he is saying to us in this day is that it is of great importance, even now, after the desert storm, to remember that we were directing the storm against ourselves because we are a part of those Iraqi soldiers, children, families. And to know that is to know the truth about ourselves. So this brother from Vietnam comes to us as a gift with an invitation, as he calls it, to the practice of peace. And he says that we cannot practice peace either within ourselves or in the world around us unless we also recognize that we have an invitation to receive the gift of time, to use the gift of time. That, I think, is what he meant when he said to us a long time ago in Atlanta, we must learn to struggle with patience, to struggle within ourselves, to struggle outside of ourselves with patience, to struggle for peace, and to struggle for a new world. Not a new world order, but a new world of relationships, a new world of interbeing, a new world in which we sense how much we belong to each other. What a gift from the fires of Vietnam. What a gift. Thich Nhat Hanh.
Cửa tung đôi cánh khép, một mũi tên sáng.
Is peace possible in our time? This is the first question I asked Thich Nhat Hanh as we sat sharing tea in the house of a Vietnamese family in Houston, Texas.
Mặt trời nổ tung.
I think war is going on in our daily life. War between you and yourself. There are conflicting things within yourself. There's conflict between you and your husband or your wife and your children. War is going on all the time. And small wars lead to a big war. But you know that with mindfulness, with the practice of peace, you can transform war into peace in your daily life, inside of yourself, within you and other members of your family. So you know that it is possible to prevent war in society and to reduce them to a minimum. It is possible. In Vietnam, for instance, we had periods of 200 years without war, which is not so bad. And if we practice peace more, we may have longer periods than that. Depends on us. And practicing peace within yourself, so that there is no war between this feeling and the other feeling, this perception and the other perception. And the roots of peace take place in yourself. And then when you have more peace in yourself, and then with more practice, you have more peace between you and another member of your family. And that way you extend peace to the society and the other society. This is the only way. I don't think there is another way.
What about going out and protesting the war? Demonstrating, being part of marches and rallies, more of the political avenues through speaking out against the government's actions. What do you think about that?
I think when you go out to protest against the war, you take it for granted that you are peace, which is not the case. Because you have contributed somehow to the war by your way of life, your lack of awareness. If you have been very alert and have done your best among yourselves and friends and other people, things could not have been like this. So protesting against the policy of war means to protest against yourself, the kind of unmindful way that you live your life. So if you see that, and your protest will take another dimension, and anger is not directed to one particular person in the government, but directed to you as a community, as not having lived mindfully enough in order to prepare, to have the capacity to avoid this war. In fact, we have to see the other person is us. The person we think that is responsible for war, he is us. They are us. We have not made enough effort to help them see things more clearly. We have not made any effort to help the seeds of peace and understanding grow in them. We are responsible, and we have to protest against ourselves. We need another kind of approach, the interbeing approach.
I have been like this. That is why they are like that. It's like if the parents are not happy, there's no way that the children can be happy. So you should not blame the children for not being happy. This is like this because that is like that. So the approach of love, of understanding. You can go to a demonstration in order to tell people what you think. This is my thinking, this is my feeling, this is my insight. We think this war is unjust, this war is destructive, this war is not worth a great nation from ours. Just saying that is useful. But if you do that to protest against someone, I don't think it is very fruitful. Especially when you are a minority, a very small minority, they would look at you and smile. But when you say that I'm not protesting, I'm just trying to tell you, express my insight, my feeling, that's all. It will have more effect than if you use your anger in order to say, you are like this, you are like that, you are inhuman, it can only damage more. And I think if we and our children know what to do in our daily life, to always plant seeds of peace and reconciliation in our heart and mind, we begin to have peace. We will not be frustrated. We will not suffer too much of anger and frustration. And this is a very good beginning in order to avoid another war. Suppose you have a war in 10 years. Do you think that 10 years is enough for you to prepare yourself and your nation in order to avoid that war? Because our tendency is not to do anything and just wait for the event to come and react. That is not an intelligent way. So prepare yourself, whether you have time, whether you have 1 minute, whether you have 10 years or 1,000 years. 1 minute in order to breathe in and out and plant a seed of peace. 10 years is to prevent a war like the Iraqi war. 1,000 years in order to prevent total nuclear war that can destroy the whole planet. So if you don't have time, there's no use to talk, to discuss, because you cannot practice peace without time. So, do you have 1 minute? Yes, I have 1 minute. So use the minute in order to breathe in and out, plant a seed of calm, peace, understanding. Do you have 10 years? Yes, I have 10 years. Use the 10 years to prevent the next war. Do you have 1,000 years? Yes. With that 1,000 years in order to prevent the destruction of our planet. Things like that. The Vietnam War was 16, 17 years ago. Between two wars, it's only that short period of time. So suppose in 10 years or 15 years you have another war somewhere. In the Middle East, in Europe, and in Africa. What should you do during that period of time in order for the war not to happen? So forgetfulness is our real enemy. Forgetfulness leads to non-action, non-practice of peace. So if we nourish our mindfulness every day, we plant the seeds of peace every day in us and in the people who surround us, and there is a chance that we can avoid the next war.
I think many Americans see this war as a success. It was a big success. We only lost, less than a couple hundred American lives. And the fact that 100,000 or more Iraqi people died doesn't really count in the eyes of many Americans as a loss. Now, I also know that there are other people in this country, myself included, who feel that any human life is equally valuable. How does that kind of feeling develop in people or not develop in people? How come some people don't count those losses?
Because you are caught in the idea of self. You think yourself is America, But in the light of the practice, we see self is made of non-self elements. America is made of non-American elements. Think of it. And the destruction of non-American elements is the destruction of America. You have lost just 100 or 200 of lives, American soldiers. But you suffer many other kinds of loss. Think of what people in the world are feeling. The people in the Middle East, you don't have a lot of sympathy from the part of many people. Many people who were sympathetic to America now turn to be very angry at you. So that is a big loss. And how many Iraqi soldiers were killed during the bombing? These should be counted as the casualties that America suffer. You see, because that's your work. And when your president say, God bless the United States of America, so he was praying only for American soldiers. And he did not pay attention to the lives of non-Americans in the war. And to us, this is not a good image of America. Selfish, arrogant, and that is the casualty you got. Not only by guns, by bombs, but by a statement. If Bush said that God bless us so that the war will end soon and that Americans as well as Iraqis will suffer the minimum possible. If he were able to say something like that, he would win a lot of sympathy from the people around the earth. But he didn't say that. That is why I said, well, you are caught in the idea of self. And self is made of non-self elements. Destroying the non-self elements is to destroy self. So just sit down and look deeply and to see the intensity of the real loss, the real casualties that America has suffered, is suffering from this war. Do not count the dead bodies only.
How do you view America at this point? You've been traveling and teaching in the United States now for 20 years. Have you seen a change in Americans, or if not, how do you see us?
I have been practicing patience, try to be patient. I always tell my students that I have enough patience because a student got to have his time or her time for transformation. So I'm not angry, I'm not frustrated. If I have 5 more days to live, and then I will do my best during these 5 days in order to plant some seeds of peace and understanding in the heart of people. I think that the seeds of peace exist also in the people whom we call people of war. It's only that they do not have friends that help water the seeds of peace and understanding in them. That is why the seeds of anger and the seeds of aggression become manifested and dominating in them. So it should not be discouraged. We should approach them with love, with patience, in order to help watering these kind of seeds in them. And that is the only way. Getting angry at them doesn't help because they are us. And I hope by my way of looking and doing things, I can influence a number of friends. And I believe that one person is a lot. If that one person perseveres, using her time, her energy, her smile, her words in order to help watering the seeds of understanding and peace in the heart of people around. I do not have the tendency to condemn anyone, anybody. They are all my brothers and sisters whom I have to help. I only ask the question as whether I am skillful enough, polite enough, kind enough, understanding enough in order to approach them and to help them. I don't think that blaming can help at all.
Do you feel it is ever justified to use violent means in response to a violent action? To use violence in self-defense?
Now, if someone broke into your house and tried to kidnap your daughter or kill your husband or something like that, what should you do? Should you adapt a more non-violent way? Well, it depends very much on your state of being at that moment. If you are prepared, and then you react more calmly and intelligently in a more non-violent way possible. You will be able to do that if you are ready. And in order to be ready and to react with intelligence and non-violence, you have to train yourself before, maybe 10 years or more like that. So wait until that time in order to ask a question is too late. So I would like to try to avoid giving an answer. It's not very helpful. Even if at that moment you know that non-violence is better than violence. You know the principle that you should love your aggressor also. That is only your intellect. It's not your whole being. So you cannot act according to that because you have a lot of fear. You have a lot of confusion. You have a lot of anger that prevent you to act with intelligence and in the most non-violent way possible.
I know you've led retreats with Vietnam veterans, and I wonder if you can speak a little bit about the person who's coming back from a war and the kind of healing and the kind of welcome that you think they need. How can we treat these soldiers coming back and the Vietnam veterans that are still in this country?
I think the Vietnam veterans, I think the Iraq veterans, also they have hidden pains within themselves. They have pain that they can be aware of, but they also have pains that they are not aware of. And I think it's very important to help them to be aware of the pain that they have in their consciousness. And one of the ways is to be aware of these pains yourself. Project these kind of pains on a screen in order for everyone to see, to show your understanding to the person who is carrying the pains in his unconscious. That is the most healing thing of all. And looking into the nature of these pains in order to transform them, in order to learn and to help not inflicting on our consciousness and on the collective consciousness the same kinds of wounds again in the future. I think that should be the practice of whole nation and not just a few psychotherapists with their clients only. Suppose you have a good filmmaker that has an eyes that can look deeply into the unconscious of a Vietnam veteran. And the image, the substance of pain that he sees with his penetrating eyes should be projected on a huge screen for the whole nation to see and to understand. That is collective meditation of the whole nation. And we learn as a community the causes that have led to this kind of wound. And by seeing these causes, we bring about a transformation and healing. And we also bring about the kind of understanding, the kind of determination that could prevent the individual consciousness and the collective consciousness to be inflicted with the same kinds of wounds in the future. I think that would be the practice of peace. And meditation is done like that on a national scale. We need artists to participate in meditation because they have their art, they have their way to explore, to look, to reveal, to show.
I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about your experience during the Vietnam War. I've never heard you talk about it, and just to understand your way of responding during that war, how you reacted, what you learned from that experience.
I learned that the source of suffering comes from the lack of understanding, the idea of happiness that people have, the lack of understanding of the real situation. Even if you have a lot of goodwill, you cannot do anything. The more goodwill you have, the more destructive your action can become. So it's not a problem of goodwill, but understanding. If you understand, and then you'll be able to avoid suffering. As a practitioner of Buddhism, I was able to see the suffering not only of the Vietnamese people, but also of the American people. When you are a soldier and you are holding a gun, you got to have some anger in order to be able to kill the soldiers on the other camp. But when you are a practitioner, you look deeply into human beings and you see that an American soldier suffers just as much as a Vietnamese soldier. And not only I suffer the loss of the Vietnamese, but I also suffer the loss of American young people. They were sent there to kill and to die, just like the Vietnamese. And they had to obey to a policy that is decided somewhere else, not in the battlefield, you see. Now if you look back at the Vietnam War, with that huge amount of energy and material resources you pour on Vietnam for the destruction, if you had used that amount of energy and time and money to help both North and South Vietnam to rebuild themselves after the war with the French, and you become a good friend of both North and South without trying to exploit them, I think that amount of energy and time would win you very big brothers, friends in the world, you see. But the problem remains as whether you have learned it, the lesson. Suppose now you have another problem in Central America that is similar to all Vietnam. Would you repeat what you have done in Vietnam? Or would you try something else? And if your mentality has not changed, if your way of seeing things has not changed, if you don't have better insight into the reality of the world, and then you do exactly what you have done in Vietnam. One time I was making a joke like this. Maybe in El Salvador or some other country in Central America, instead of supporting the anti-communist, why don't you support the communist? Try something different. Because the dollar, when you pour on one side, you corrupt that side. So pour your dollars on the communist side in order to corrupt them, and you get a victory for the anti-communist. That was a joke, but maybe it contains truth in it. That is a Quan, subject of meditation for America. I think the best way is to make friends with both sides. All men are our brothers. That's a very old saying. If they fight, they struggle hard, it means they suffer somehow. Otherwise, why should they fight hard? They are suffering something from something.
One of my concerns is that people listening to this will think, this is all very kind and very nice, but this monk doesn't have really the political sophistication that it takes to understand what's happening in the world right now. And it's very complicated political issues involved, and it's not just about a daily mindfulness practice for several thousand people. That's not really going to make much of a dent in the world. How would you respond to that kind of criticism, I guess?
I cannot say anything in response to that. It's like when you say that Jesus was not very practical when he said, well, if someone slap you on the right your face and then you offer your left face, it's not very sophisticated way of dealing with the situation. What I said is that insight comes from deep looking. Deep looking in order to see that the suffering of the other person is our own suffering. And making the other person happy, you get happy too. And this is not something unrealistic, you see. When you make your husband happy, when he blooms like a flower, of course you seeing him like that, you are happy, right? Happiness is not an individual thing. If the other person is not happy, there's no way that you can be happy. Is that a kind of idealistic statement? It is based so little on reality. So I'm saying things like that. Not something nice to say, but something very concrete and can be practiced now and here. So do you want complicated things? Or do you want simple things that can be realized? And complicated things are used in order to hide the truth. The plain truth is what you need. When you are angry, you are angry. When you are selfish, you are selfish. When you are violent, you are violent. That is simple. You cannot say like this, well, I might look as if I am selfish, but because you don't see, there is this, there is that, there is this, there is that. That is why, although I look selfish, but I am not really selfish. You are trying to conceal the plain truth. And you say that you are sophisticated. But that kind of things can only make more trouble and make people more confused. To me, the truth is simple, plain. When you kill a person, you kill a person. When a person is dead, he is dead. When you need gasoline, you just say that you need gasoline. When you need to be in control, you say that you need to be in control. You don't say, I do that because I want to help this person or the other person, this nation or the other nation. So why trying to avoid telling the truth in the most plain, simple way? Another thing, I do not enjoy fighting. I try my best to be myself, to be what I say. There is no contradiction between my insight and my way of being. I'm not trying to say something nice in order to soothe people. And I try to offer some practical way. Like when I talk about Vietnam, you see. Well, if you are sophisticated, if you were smart, if you were intelligent, if you were understanding, you would not have wasted your time, energy in Vietnam like that. Now, the Vietnamese also made mistakes. The Americans made mistakes. But the fact remains that whether we have learned something from our mistakes. If there is another Vietnam, would you do it better? Would we do it better? Would America be able to use energy, resources in order to win friends? To make North Vietnam into a friend and to make South Vietnam into a friend? I mean, just by helping the rebuilding of the two parts of the countries, I think it's possible It is a possible thing to do. You could have done it. You could help South Vietnam. You could have support North Vietnam. Because both sides need medicine, food, building bridges, building schools, and people will not refuse your help when they see that your help is not contain any intention to colonize you or something like that. You see, and that make America greater. Now suppose you think of Iraq. You who have a heart, you should think of how to make friends with Iraq again. Iraq as a whole nation and not just a portion of the population. How for America to become a friend of Iraq again. And showing that you want to become a friend without the intention of making use, dominating. Suppose 100,000 soldiers died during the bombing. It means there are 300,000 or 400,000 people who have lost their father or their big brother. And what you will do in order to comfort these people? Say something to them, address them directly. We know that you suffer because of our bombs. This is already a good thing, an act of reconciliation. Before you do anything, just expressing yourself that you see it, that you see the suffering, and you are co-responsible. I did not drop the bomb myself, but my brother did. So I feel co-responsible. We are sorry. Just saying like that is already an act of reconciliation. And what you can do more, well, we'll proceed from that point, you see. So understanding is the starting point. I think after Vietnam, the reconciliation has not been even made between the two nations. 17 years already have passed and reconciliation has not been made. And that it was the practice of peace. And now you have another another war on your back. It's not ended yet.
Châu báu chất đầy thế giới, tôi đem tặng bạn sáng nay.
This concludes Peacemaking with Thich Nhat Hanh, music by Sister Chong Kong. To order additional copies of this audio learning program, or to receive a free catalog of over 400 audio and video tapes, please visit the Sounds True website, www.soundstrue.com, or call 800-333-9185, or write the Sounds True catalog, P.O. Box 8010, Boulder, Colorado 80306. Thank you for listening.
Là bao phép là yên bình, chim hót thông reo hoa nở, trời xanh mây trắng là đây, ánh mắt thương yêu sáng tỏ, nụ cười ý thức đông đầy.
Ba nghiệp lặng than tình, gửi lòng theo tiếng chuông. Nguyện người nghe tình thức vượt thoát nẻo đau buồn. lòng nghe lắng lòng nghe tiếng chuông huyền diệu đưa về nhất tâm. Nguyện tiếng chuông này vang pháp giới khắp nơi u tối mọi loài nghe. Siêu nhiên vượt thoát vòng sinh tử, giác ngộ tâm tư một hướng về. Nghe chuông phiền não tan mây khói, lặng thân an miệng mỉm cười. Hơi thở nương chuông về chánh niệm, vườn tâm hoa tuệ nở xinh tươi. Phổ môn vọng tiếng triều dưng, bé thơ xuất hiện giữa lòng đóa sen. Cơm lộ một giọt rưới lên, xuân về trên khắp mọi miền núi sông. Nam mô Bồ Tát Quan Thế Âm, Nam mô Bồ Tát Quan Thế Âm, Nam mô Bồ Tát Quan Thế Âm.
Giờ phút linh thiêng, gió lặng chim ngừng, trái đất rung động bay lần. Khi bất diệt đi ngang dòng sinh diệt, bàn tay truyền pháp trong hương đêm tinh khiết. Ân các tường nở trắng một bông hoa. Thế giới 3000 đồng thanh ca ngợi, đồng thanh ca ngợi vắng Phật Thích Ca.
Nam mô Đức Bổn Sư Bổn Thích Ca Mâu Ni. Nam mô Đức Bổn Sư Bổn Thích Ca Mâu Ni. Nam mô Đức Bổn Sư Bổn Thích Ca Mâu Ni.
Giờ phút linh thiêng, đóa bắc diệt nở ngài giữa vườn hoa sinh diệt. Nu giác ngộ hé thầy thành muôn thi thiêm. Ngài về đây học tiếng nói loài người. Đêm nào từ trời đâu xuất nhìn về chư thiên thấy địa cầu quê hương tôi sáng hơn vì sao sáng, và tinh tú muôn phương châu về cho đến khi vừng đông tỏa rạng, cho đến khi vườn lắm tì ní biến thành chiếc nôi êm chào đón Phật sơ sinh.
Nam mô Đức Bổn Sư Bổn Thích Ca Mâu Ni. Nam mô Đức Bổn Sư Bổn Thích Ca Mâu Ni. Nam mô Đức Bổn Sư Bổn Thích Ca Mâu Ni.
Nhưng đêm nay từ địa cầu quê hương tôi, loài người mặc lễ rưng rưng hướng ca về mấy từng trời đâu xuất. Tiếng kêu khóc của sinh linh ngã gục dưới bàn tay ma vương, dưới bàn tay bạo lực cấm thù. Trong bóng đêm địa cầu quê hương tôi đã mòn mỏi mong chờ. Giờ mầu nhiệm để vô biên cho bóng tôi tan đi với niềm lo sợ, cho hồi long hoa về, cho hồi long hoa về.
Nam mô Đức Di Lặc Hạ Sanh trong tương lai. Nam mô Đức Di Lặc Hạ Sanh trong tương lai. Nam mô Đức Di Lặc Hạ Sanh trong tương lai.
Cho hồi long hoa về để pháp âm tiếp nối bằng lời ca tiếng hát em thơ. Mưa rơi mà nhẹ nhẹ bên trời. Mưa rơi mà nhẹ nhẹ bên trời. Lắng nghe thổn thức đầy vơi mà nỗi lòng. Ô mấy từng mà dạo ra sớm khuya gieo hạt mà từ hoàm mai này mà lòng đất nở hoa cho đời mưa rơi nhẹ nhẹ bên trời ngủ đi nỗi kết mong lung để cho hơi thở mấy từng vào xa sớm khuya gieo hạt từ hoa mai này lòng đất nở hoa mà cho đời ngủ đi nỗi kết ta ơi mai này chuyện hoa mai này chuyện hoa cho đời thương nhau
Em đã đến mây tan gió lặng mặt trời lên không khí sáng cây xanh con chim nhỏ hót lên thân thàn đã đến như gió lay. Em đã đến như bóng mây trên dòng sông. Em đã đến mây tan gió lặng, mặt trời lên không khí sáng cây xanh, con chim nhỏ hót lên thanh thản, tiếng ngân dài trong một thoáng mong manh. Em đã đến như gió lay. Em đã đến như bóng mây trên dòng sông.
Châu báu chất đầy thế giới, tôi đem tặng bạn sáng nay một vốc kim cương sáng chói, long lanh suốt cả đêm ngày. Mỗi phút một viên ngọc quý, thơm thâu đất nước trời mây. Chỉ cần một hơi thở nhẹ là bao phép là hiển bày. Chim hót thông reo hoa nở, trời xanh mây trắng là đây. Ánh mắt thương yêu sáng tỏ, nụ cười ý thức đông đầy. Hỡi người giàu sang bậc nhất, tha phương câu thực xưa nay, hãy thôi làm thân cùng tường về đi tiếp nhận gia tài. Hãy dâng cho nhau hạnh phúc và an trú phút giây này. Hãy buông thả dòng sầu khổ về nắng sự sống trong tay. Cửa tung đôi cánh khép, một mũi tên sáng loáng lìa dây cung. Lao vút tới mặt trời nổ tung, đầy sân hoa cam rụng, phảng phất bóng vô cùng.
The two leaves of the pinewood gate fall shut. A shimmering arrow leaves the bow, speeds upward, splits the sky, and explodes the sun. The blossoms of the orange trees fall until the courtyard is carpeted. There, the flickering reflection of infinity.
Cửa tung đôi cánh khép, một mũi tên sáng loáng lìa dây cung. Lao vút tới mặt trời nổ tung, đầy sân hoa cam rụng, phảng phất bóng vô cùng.
Bên bờ suối vô vi, trăng lên chờ ta đó. Ngàn xưa từ ngàn xưa, trăng vẫn chưa hề lặn. Ta đi vào viện xứ, trăng đưa lối ta về. Trưng dương muôn bến mong, nên ta vẫn còn mê. Trăng huyền không mơ hồi, hương lan ngát bên đồi. Mấy ngàn phương về hội, giờ tao ngộ đến rồi. Quê hương vẫn là đây, trăng vẫn mặn trăng này. Ngàn sau nữa, lòng giữa trời mây.
Cô dâu hành hướng thời gian không tím, màu thời gian không như màu trời xanh. Màu hồng gỗ xưa rêu đã lạnh và bụi đường. Thời gian không trôi chảy, không gian cũng ngừng động. Trên đầu tôi chim bay, nơi tay người nhầm màu then cườm. Mà hay đông để chàng lùi về nơi xuất phát. Một mình tôi, một mình tôi, bên đôi đường đông mờ như hai nẻo xuống lên bàng hoàng vang đồng tiếng chân xưa gọi về tình thức. Lối cũ dấu hành, hương thời gian không tím, màu thời gian không như màu trời xanh. Màu hồng gỗ xưa rêu đã lạnh và bụi đường. Thời gian không trôi chảy, không gian cũng ngừng động. Trên đầu tôi chim bay, nơi tay người nhiệm màu then cườm. Mà hay đông để chàng lùi về nơi xuất phát. Một mình tôi, một mình tôi, bên đôi đường đông mờ giữa hai nẻo xuống lên bàng hoàng vang đồng tiếng chân xưa gọi về tình thức.
Đừng tìm về quá khứ, đừng tưởng tới khứ đã không còn, tương lai thì chưa tới. Hãy quan chiếu sự sống trong giờ phút hiện tại. Kẻ thức giả an trú vững chãi và thảnh thơi. Phải tin tiến hôm nay, kéo ngày mai không kịp. Cái chết đến bất ngờ, không thể nào mặc cả. Người nào biết an trú đêm ngày trong chánh niệm, thì Mâu Ni gọi là người biết sống. Người biết sống một mình. Đừng tìm về quá khứ, đừng tưởng tới tương lai. Quá khứ đã không còn, tương lai thì chưa tới. Hãy quan chiếu sự sống trong giờ phút hiện tại. Kẻ thức giả an trú vững chãi và thảnh thơi. Phải tin tiến hôm nay, kéo ngày mai không kịp. Cái chết đến bất ngờ, không thể nào mặc cả. Người nào biết an trú đêm ngày trong chánh niệm, thì Mâu Ni gọi là người biết sống. Người biết sống một mình, thì Mâu Ni gọi là người biết sống. Người biết sống